Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I, Shivansh Bansal, co-founder at Law Community, welcome you all on Lawyers Speak. Today we have invited another fantastic guest, Ms. Amrupali Sempathy, a graduate from Cornell University, New York. Ma'am is an excellent lawyer who has worked for Fortune 500 corporations and international law firms primarily for matters dealing with end-to-end contract lifecycle management, contract review and support, corporate compliance and risk management, data privacy, GDPR compliance, and cyber laws. We welcome ma'am on our platform to know more about her journey. So, my first question is you have an amazing academic and professional experiences in top places. What is your advice to young aspirants?
Well, to be very honest, I do not think I'm in any position or capability to give advice to anyone. However, I can give suggestions. So I can only say that, define your own idea of success, because society is going to throw so many ideas, so many inputs, in front of you. The coming generation I have seen are so much into, the whole concept of success without exactly understanding what it means for them. So in today's times, I have seen success is more about being famous or being in the limelight, being in the public, domain, and of course earning a lot of money. So we're not really looking into the fact of whether that success is so-called success is giving you happiness or not. So I think one should always decide for himself or herself what success means and how you want to achieve that. So for me, if I can speak for myself, success for me was something where I enjoyed doing whatever I did. And secondly, of course, getting a decent amount of monetary remuneration for that, and spending some time quality time with my family. That is very, very important. So when I started working as a lawyer, these three considerations were foremost for me. And probably that is one of the reasons I did not join one of the top tier law firms in our country, where I had everything was finalized. I could have joined, but because I interned with them earlier and I knew the stringent working hours and how crazy the timelines can get, I was like, is this what I really want to do? Because the pay package and everything was so awesome, and I was so tempted about it. But then when I thought about it a lot, and I was like, no, in the long run, maybe this is not going to give me happiness, because I have other plans in life. And life is short, and I want to do other things also. So that's why I said no to it. So yeah, so that's my advice to suggestion, of course, not advice, I'd say. Suggestion to people who are just coming out of law schools and aiming to go to greater places in life and all that. So just decide for yourself what you want and what exactly makes you happy. It's not always about money. It's not always about brand names. It's not always about being in the public limelight and all that. Ultimately, what matters is how happy you are with whatever you do.
So, how was your experience of studying law abroad and what made you take that decision?
First of all, it was amazing. One of the best decisions I took. Why I took it? See, I'll be very honest. When I started, when I started, doing my LLB, I was not really thinking of going ahead and doing a master's in law abroad, because obviously, most people when they start studying in law schools, the first thing in their mind is that I'm going to be a trial lawyer, and of course I'm going to be either in criminal or in property or in civil litigations and all that. I'll be dealing with cases and all. So for these things, you don't really need to go abroad and pursue a master's degree, because they're not really going to help you as such, to be very honest. So yeah, so when I started doing my law, I was not really thinking or planning that I'll be going abroad or something like that, because to be honest, I also had this thing in my mind that I'm going to be a trial lawyer and a criminal trial lawyer. But then destiny had different plans for me, and I also changed as a person. I would say I evolved as a person in the 3 years of law school that I did. And gradually I understood, where it's not always about what I want, it's also what is good for me and how best I can, perform as a lawyer in whatever field of law that I choose to get into. So once I passed out, I was, I think, very clear in my mind that it's going to be contract laws and corporate, side of it, because that really excited me. That really interested me a lot. And for that very purpose, I was like, yeah, so doing a master's for this particular side of law would help me. Because as you know, contract management is a very international, set of laws. And they are not exactly very rigid when it comes to country boundaries of laws and understanding of legalities, because otherwise if we talk about criminal law or if we talk about property law, these are very different in every country all over the world. But when you're talking about business laws and all, these are something you deal on an everyday basis. All MNCs, corporations, they deal on an everyday basis. And for this, I feel one should go abroad, not necessarily to any one particular place. I mean, anywhere. I mean, just to open up your insight, meet new people, make new connections, do some internships also over there. So my reasons for going abroad and pursuing a master's of law was this, so that I could I could make new contact. I could understand a country and the people of that country by studying there for some time, by working there for some time. So yeah, so that was what really motivated me.
So you have worked in one of the big four as foreign lead consultant.
Yes.
How is your experience as lead consultant?
Okay, so I'll be very honest about it. And yeah, so basically, the best part about working over there was the brand name, because that kind of opened opportunities and avenues to me, which perhaps would not have opened up otherwise. So Deloitte is it's a worldwide renowned consultancy, and working there, I mean, you are obviously you are getting in touch with so many different people from so many different communities, cultures, and countries also. Because I was a foreign legal consultant in the contract management department. So for that, I was daily interacting with our clients from Europe, from the Middle East, from Australia, Canada, all over the world. And I was also leading with a lot of contracts, international business contracts for different countries all over the world again. So it kind of enhanced my idea about how businesses work, how we have to adapt ourselves to different timelines, because the timelines are always different, and you have to make sure, because you're in the consultancy, so you have to make sure that the clients are all happy with and you can't say, oh, this is not the time for me, it's night over here. Even if it's 3 o'clock in the night, you have to be alert and listening to those clients through calls and through Zoom meetings or through Microsoft team meetings and everything. You have to be alert and you have to be there for them. So that was something I really learned over there. And apart from it, I made a lot of friends, and these are lifelong friends. So that was again something which was really, really amazing. But here I might say something, that what I had expected when I joined Deloitte, it did not really meet up to that expectations. I think I should be honest here, because usually we are so much enthralled by all these brand names Deloitte, KPMG, Google, and everything. We think that once we are entering their gates, we are like, oh, we are the best lawyers in the world, or we're going to learn something awesome. It doesn't really happen like that. It's a reality check actually. So you have to start from the grassroots level. You have to prove yourself every day, and it's difficult. But I'm sure if you're motivated and excited enough by your work, you will do it.
So you are a human rights activist also. So
Yes.
what do you think about the lengthy pre-trial detentions?
Shivans, it's a little sad. I would say it's sad because, I mean, people who actually have power, people who actually have the money and the influences and the contacts, they rarely, if ever, have to face a pre-trial detention or the under-trial detention. They never go through it. Forget about that. They don't even face any trial as such. And even if they do, they manage to get away from the clutches of the law. So usually it is people, I mean, who are not very well versed in understanding law. People who come from the from the outer margins of society, or people who are from, who do not have that kind of contacts or those kind of necessary financial background privileges which can help them maneuver their way through these kind of legalities. So that is really sad. because I think first and foremost, people need to be educated. Like most people do not know what is a pre-trial detention and what is an under-trial detention. Both are absolutely different, right? So yeah, so but because the police comes and they say like so we are you have to like go to the police station and then maybe like we are arresting you. So most people do not even say like okay, fine. They are so scared about it. They don't even like ask. I think the whole concept here is that people must be educated first and foremost. Secondly, it should be the duty of the state governments to make sure that a legal aid attorney is available in each of these cases, in each of such scenarios. And the question arises, why would a legal aid lawyer first of all be there if they're not paid well? I mean, at least paid decently. So that again should be a concern, that people who are practicing legal aid and who are helping out others in these crisis, they should be paid well, because at the end of it, money is a motivator. And if they're not paid well, they will not want to go and because how long, maybe when you're young in your 20s, you are full of all this ideas, I will help my fellow people and everything. But then once you are of a certain age, you obviously want to earn money. So I think it should be the government's initiative to make sure legal aid attorneys are paid well and they have a decent salary, and to make sure that every person who's going through this kind of pre-trial detentions and under trial detentions, they have an allotted legal aid attorney to help them out. Apart from it, I also feel that this is an age of technology, and I think technology does make things smoother and easier for all of us. So why not for things like, I mean, pre-trial and under trial detentions? Like there should be a log of people who are currently under detention for these things, and there should be a list of the names and everything. And once the person is cleared of all suspicions and everything, then you can just probably let them go. So why do unnecessarily make it lengthy for years and years and years? So these are some of the things I feel should be taken into account.
So, how do you think NHRC can be made more effective?
It can be made, it will be made, I can say it will be made effective only when it goes beyond its current status of just giving advice and recommendations. Because till the time you do not take active initiatives, nothing is going to happen. I mean, you're just going to be a namesake, you're just going to be that statue, that idol of justice and everything, without actually doing anything proactive about achieving justice. So yeah, so that is the first and foremost thing. Please go beyond that. It's not always about advice or giving recommendations. You have to make sure you take a very active, stand on so many issues currently plaguing not only the country, but all over the world. So that has to be there first and foremost.
What kind of legal complexities do you deal in the global clients?
So many of them, so many of them. Initially, when you first start working, you are oh wow, I'm working for my client who's probably based out of UK or maybe the US. But when you start working with them, you realize it is not such such an easy walk away. Because at the end of it, you have to be aware of the cultural cultural concepts. Because mostly you're interacting with these clients. It's not that you are just sending them emails and they're sending you work through emails. It doesn't really work like that. There are global meetings, clients with whom you probably have never interacted with before, and suddenly you're having a face-to-face interaction with them. They might crack a joke which you may or may not understand. So that is also there. So you have to be aware of the cultural side of it, because I have a feeling from what I have understood till now, if you understand people's jokes, you are in. If you do not understand their jokes, you are out. And this, this is also true for our clients as well. Because especially American clients, they have a tendency to laugh a lot. They have a tendency to joke a lot, even in very serious, meetings and calls. And if at that point of time, you're not participating and maybe you're not aware of what they are saying and not able to understand, what this whole thing is about, it won't make that kind of a difference, but it does. I think it always helps to be a part of, the inside conversations. It always does. Secondly, the timelines, which I had mentioned earlier as well. So if it's for US clients and if I'm in India, obviously when their day starts, our work day is already over. So you have to be constantly on your feet, because you never know, when you might be asked to interact with them or when the work comes up. So but you have to be there for them, and no matter whatever time in the night or the day you have a contract or you have a negotiation call to attend, you have to attend all that. Also, I feel that currently the way it is, and I'm speaking for for India, for us, because the whole concept of giving working for international clients legally, it came up in the last few years. The concept wasn't there earlier. So because of that, I mean, they are of course impressed with our work, no doubt about it, but then at the same time we have to keep proving ourselves every single day. And there are so many competitors around, so they can easily go to any other any other organization or corporate setup and ask them to provide them legal services. So that, for that, so that it doesn't happen, we have to make sure that we are providing them the best quality of the work that is possible in the shortest timelines. So that is a huge, responsibility.
What are your views about cyberbullying and how can one control those things?
Cyberbullying is, I would say, one one of the side effects of technology, internet precisely, social media. So that is something you really cannot avoid. Just as the fact that there are good people in society and there are bad people in society, in the same way there are amazing benefits of technology and social media, and at the same time you have not so good outcomes of social media and technology, and cyberbullying is one of these. I think I mean, of course, governments and cyber police the worldwide, they're doing their job. They're trying to minimize such kind of things do not happen. But then I also feel it is up to us, as people, as citizens, as responsible, human beings. I think it also depends on us that we should not be so much into social media that we are kind of posting really sensitive information out there. That can and should be avoided, because see, no matter whatever you do, technology keeps on getting advanced every single day, and law to keep in sync with technology's advancement takes a little bit of time, because that is what has happens, and that is what is happening right now. So for that, I mean, to avoid such kind of things, I think it's better to be safe than sorry yourself. So just be more responsible, and avoid posting anything too sensitive about yourself, which includes photographs and sensitive information, so that people online, I mean, who do not like you or for whatever reasons were sadistic or who just take pleasure in in bullying people, so they do not take advantage of such information.
How much does client confidentiality matter in a client lawyer relationship, according to you?
A lot. I would say a lot, because that is the base, the root of whatever we do. Because as a lawyer, my entire work is dependent that I should I should protect my client's information no matter what, because that is the only way the client will trust me with their privileged information. Otherwise, the whole concept of client attorney relationship just goes out of the window. I mean, so it is the most important element, I would say, and not just in trial law, in every kind of law. Because I am more of a business lawyer, I'm more into corporates and all. So even here also, I'm dealing with sensitive agreements, sensitive documents. So why would the client trust me if they feel I am not going to uphold that trust? So this, I feel, is the most important aspect. The whole trust factor between a client and the.
So, at the same time, how do you think technology is helping in the legal practice to run smoothly?
Like I said, it is an age of technology. Everything we do, whatever we do, even the interview is through technology right now. So yeah, so you cannot get away from it, but you have to be well versed with it. You have to keep learning it, because to be very honest, law is using a lot of technology these days, a lot of it. Even for reviewing agreements, highly complex agreements, we have AI tools. We have repositories for for maintaining our contracts, which are goes into thousands of them. So you have to learn how to use these things, because if you do not know these things in today's times, no organization is going to invest time and energy to train you, because people prefer hiring employees who are trained, who know how to operate these things, because these are so much in sync that you cannot get away from it. It is no longer like a paper and a desk job. everything you do, whatever you do, like it's through technology, be it like having Zoom meetings, Microsoft meetings, anything, like you have to be like pretty much like aware of how to use these kind of things. So I would say it's a huge part and parcel of law right now.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for having such an amazing interaction with us. And it is definitely going to benefit a lot of young minds. And we are delighted for the same. Thank you so much, ma'am.